Hi, Dr. Rob.
Hey, Tammy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm busy. I've been writing and writing and writing, which is my craziness. It took me,
I told them that you had said, I'm never going to write another book and that you're now writing another book.
okay, well, it's going to be
There's that.
it's an even dozen, and then I'm done, like eggs.
Oh, sure.
But I, but I just
Well,
spent a
there's the
week writing
baker's
this
dozen, which is 13. So,
marriage
oh,
where my husband bakes for me, and that's not going to happen if I keep writing books. But it's your
okay.
fault. It's your fault. You
Uh,
keep saying, here's one you should write. Here's one you should write.
yeah, there's actually a few more on the list, but we'll do them. We'll take it one at a time. This one is really important. I'm all in favor of it. So,
All
but
righty.
anyway. Okay. So the first question, on a webinar, my husband heard you talk about grief stages, the betrayed woman experiences and how it affects couples recovery. He now blames me for not moving forward in our marriage, although he's not doing recovery work and still abusive and rages. Can you clarify what you meant? Oh my goodness. That this to me is one of those where somebody completely took things out of context. I often share, Dr. Rob, people go, well, I've got the book and I've read the book, and I was like, I know for sure that addicts can read a paragraph and eliminate a whole bunch of words and completely skew this. And this is exactly what I would invite him to listen to the webinar with Debbie McCrae. Did a great one, a 2-part series on grief. And he might not pay attention to that anyway, but I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Rob.
Well, I'm actually wanted to, well, it's okay. I wanted to give it was not the stages of grief that I talked about. It was the stages of forgiveness. Because I don't think I've ever really talked about the stages of grief here, but I don't think it's really the issue,
Oh,
whatever we come up with, because it could be the stages of lemonade. And what I hear is that this partner is not where her husband wants him to be. Husband, I think, yeah, or her guy. And so listen, I have a book called Out of the Doghouse, and it's about helping men restore equality in their relationship after cheating. And one of the lessons in there is don't tell your spouse that they're not emotionally where you want them to be. So I'm sorry, I'm getting a little loud, but this is upsetting to me because what it says to me is, as I said, I can give you every stage of everything, but why don't you get to be angry? Why don't you get to be hurt? If you were, now I don't know, Tammy, how long this has been. This person hasn't said we've been working on this for 3 years or 5 years, but if it hasn't even been a year, then I don't expect you are going to move forward.
well, but it also says
And then
he's not doing
yeah,
any recovery
right,
work and
could
is
you
still
comment on
abusive.
that?
Yeah, like how are you supposed to move through
Right,
grief? How are
right,
you supposed to heal when you're still in? I mean, he's still in active. Uh,
right. No trust.
right. So at best, if he stopped the acting out, that's abstinence. But you're really clear that he's raging at you. That is toxic to any kind of healing, to any kind of relationship. He's not doing anything to rebuild trust. So Dr. Rob talked about Out of the Doghouse. We have a work group that starts July 7th. I just looked it up for someone else. And that would be a really phenomenal option. But to you, all I can say is, please, healthy boundaries for you, because he's manipulating, gaslighting, blame shifting. He's doing all of those negative behaviors. So you taking care of you and setting healthy boundaries for you, regardless of what he's doing. But it's challenging to have any hope for healing if he's still doing all of those negative behaviors.
I just wrote, I put in the chat, and I'm going to make it a little easier, the 5 stages to forgiveness. So people can get a sense of what that looks like. But there are many books about it, and I think people think forgiveness is just, oh, I forgive you or I don't. And that's like grief, saying, well, I miss you, but I'm done. There's a whole process, and people go back and forth and back and forth. So I think to think of yourself as, where am I in this process of forgiveness, rather than why haven't I forgiven them yet, or when am I ever going to forgive them, will help you understand, well, I'm halfway through, or I'm a third of the way through, or because I didn't really, Tam, I didn't know that. Like I always thought it was like a thing and you were done, but it's actually not. So anyway, I'm going to put it in the chat real quick.
Well, you're not putting it in the chat. I can see that you're going to put it in the questions, which is different than the chat. So I think you guys can see it in the questions, answered
Okay, then I'll
questions.
put it in the
But
chat.
otherwise, if you put it in the chat, that is specific, and then you should all be able to see it in the chat.
Okay, you got it. Why don't we go ahead to the next
Okay,
question?
the
That's
next
a sad
question is,
question.
oh, I didn't even start it. My partner says sponsor told him his wife was just able to forgive and forget, and she never went through any betrayal trauma healing. So when he goes to him, when he's having trouble with emotions around our relationship issues, his sponsor tells him he never had those issues. Also, my partner doesn't want to reach out to anyone because he feels it's not fair that everyone tells him he just has to deal with the way things are at home. Speaking in terms of safety boundaries, I've said that he doesn't think are fair, and no one seems to care about how he feels. He feels everyone is looking past the fact that he quit doing drugs 3 years ago and worked very hard to stay clean, but he's still very emotionally unstable and doesn't see why he's got to sacrifice his feelings to help me heal. He blames me for his misery, tells me he should feel safe talking to me about how he feels, and I need to learn how to be a team and shut my mouth and listen to him sometimes too. I sometimes feel so bad that it looks like it's continued. Hang on, I gotta go find it. Oh, I feel so bad that he's hurting, but I'm just not healed enough to carry his emotional weight too. Oh my goodness.
Well, on my boundary would be, I think he made a very good suggestion, but not in the nicest way. I would not talk about this with him anymore. He's asked you to, unfortunately, he said it in a mean way, but a great boundary for, look, if I start talking with someone about something and they get angry at me or they get mean to me or they throw it back in my face, to keep bringing it up is to open myself up to being harmed. And this man, right or wrong, good or bad, is telling you in the whole story and then at the last that he isn't capable of talking about this and he can't tolerate your very understandable feelings. So, looking at you, you can't convince him, you can't change him, you can't make him feel worse or bad, or you can either say what you need to say and it will be responded to. But when somebody tells me to shut up, I think, you know what? I'm going to shut up and I'm not going to engage with them in anything other than what would you like for breakfast or what are we doing tonight for dinner? Don't talk about this. And if it is very painful for you to not have these conversations, then there are other ways that you might need to deal with the relationship and certainly get support from at least some of the free support groups that we give. Tammy, this is a great situation where someone do the Betrayed Partners group, I think. But, I want to go through each detail and like sort of take it on. But the reality is there's nothing I can tell you that is going to make this person empathic or respectful or understand. This is not going to happen considering you're not only have someone coming back to you aggressively, but they're actually being mean to you. And the word gaslighting comes to mind. They're gaslighting. So that here's the deal. So you don't lose your mind and you don't lose any shred of respect that you may have for this person. I suggest that you simply set a boundary around, I am not going to bring things up that he upset me or this and that, because I'm just going to back off, because otherwise I'm going to get blamed for it. And I know that. The other thing I want to say is this is not recovery. We have something called the 10th step. And without going into detail, we are required to make a constant inventory of the mistakes we've made. Lord knows I make them. And when I do a 10th step with Tammy, I call her tomorrow and I say, I think I said the wrong thing last night and I'm really sorry. And she says whatever she says and we move on. But this is not someone who seems capable of taking responsibility for his own behavior. And that's why you're getting it. What you're basically hearing is, why are you bringing things up that upset me, even if they're things that are deservedly upsetting you? So, I don't know, Tama, how you would, but I don't take on people who, well, let me tell you Rob's rule for relationships. You can hurt me, you can let me down, you can disappoint me. The only requirement is, can you take responsibility for your behavior? Can you come back the next day and, I acted this way, I didn't mean it. But if you come back to me and you say, boy, you really were a jerk last night, no wonder why I yelled at you, I'm not going to be close to you because it's not safe. So one of my requirements for any relationship is someone who's willing to reflect on themselves and own their part. Otherwise, I lose my mind and I think I'm the problem. So, Tammy, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I have a lot of them. like, well, I do, because like it's one of
I
those
know.
where I want gold stars because I quit doing the very destructive
Right,
behavior
right.
of, the substance. I mean, healthy people don't have a substance use problem, and he wants a gold star for, I work so hard to stop that. I say this at probably almost everybody who calls me, looking for support as a betrayed partner or as the person struggling with the problematic behaviors. Stopping the behaviors is the very beginning of the process. That's a symptom. That's the maladaptive coping mechanism.
Right.
That isn't the problem. People perceive that it's the problem, but that isn't the problem. So stopping that is just, you're getting ready to say something. What were you going to say?
I was going to say dry drunk.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I was thinking, I was going there too. This is a dry drunk because I stopped the substances, but I'm a nasty human being, because that's what I hear is a nasty human being in all of this. And and like when you have a sponsor, sponsors are human beings, and you can pick a sponsor that you can pick a sponsor that will tell you what you want to hear, or you can pick a sponsor that's going to help you grow as a person. And what he did is he picked a sponsor that's going to tell him what he wants to hear. The other thing, I'm not 100% like, unless you're hearing this from the sponsor, like you already know he lies, and so like I'm not 100% sure. And honestly, like the wife that was just able to forgive and forget, that sounds like somebody who hasn't done their particular work, as well. So this goes back to your healthy boundaries. And you said, I set boundaries that he doesn't think are fair. I don't care if he thinks they're fair. Those are your healthy boundaries. Those are your needs, what you need for your safety. That's what you're doing. And if he whines and has a tantrum, that's on him. And it's okay for you to say, I hear that you don't think they're fair. But these are my healthy boundaries, because I'm the only person in this room in this relationship that values me. And so I'm going to take care of me regardless of what you choose to do. But boy, those boundaries with this kind of behavior, those would be I'm pulling, I'm circling the wagons closer. I'm pulling I'm pulling things in tighter because I have to, because that person is not, bridging the gap to be able to be in a relationship in a healthy way with you. So I'm really sorry. That's what I
Right.
really feel.
And I just want to say quickly that I wouldn't be surprised if this person is still acting out in one way or the other, because, when I am carrying a lot of guilt and shame, that's why I want to shove back hard. Tammy and I read a book recently on lying. And I believe this is one of the symptoms of lying is turning it around and putting it on that other person. Right? Isn't that right? That's in the book.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So he's lying.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, he's definitely not doing any recovery work.
Mm-hmm.
He may going and talk to his sponsor, and who knows what he's saying to the sponsor. I mean, like all of that is, it feels like he's lying to himself and everyone else. So the only thing you can do is take care of you, and you are the only one in this relationship that will take care of you. So, okay, next question, Dr. Rob. I'm the betrayer.
Go ahead.
Okay. 2 years out from D-Day, my son is 20 years old. He saw a web browser that was open and saw that I cheated on his mother, my wife. Should I talk to my son about what I did? I acted crazy at times during the marriage. My wife is concerned that he will continue in his father's footsteps.
Well, Tammy, I think you could start with the book. I was going to put it in the chat, but then I realized you can. There is a book that has come out recently, and I don't think it gives all the answers from what I've heard, but it does tell a lot of stories about adult children who remember and found out that, or were told that their dad was a sex addict or their mom. And how did they tolerate and how did they work through that? And so the book just came out maybe a month or so ago. And I'm really recommending it to people who have children who have found out or been told, because I think any guidance, this is not an area, adult children and alcoholics is an area that's had a lot of exploration, understanding, and support. Adult children of the issues regarding sex and porn and all that, I think this is the first book that's been written as far as I know, Tammy. So I don't think that his finding out is going to lead to his following in his father's footsteps. I don't have sex addiction because I found out that my father was cheating. He was, but I didn't become a sex addict. I became a sex addict because of the long problematic dynamics that I grew up with because of emotional incest on the behalf of one of my parents, because of being idealized in ways that didn't make sense for me as a child. I could name the list. I've had lots of therapy, but finding out something does not lead to addiction. He may be pretty confused and upset. He may be wanting to protect your wife from you or something like that. But, I do think that you absolutely should talk to him about it because he knows. And one of the characteristics of problematic families, certainly the one I grew up in, is there was lots of crap going on and no one ever talked about it. And in fact, one of the things that I wish my parents had said, the one thing I wish I'd gotten from them before they passed was if either or both had said simply, we had some issues and I think they played out in your childhood. Just that would have been such a gift to me. So I do think that it is important for you to validate his reality and tell him that he did things that, and I hope you're on the road to recovery. I mean, I hope you're in therapy. I hope you're seeing someone or you're going to meetings. I hope you're working on this because I would not want to talk to my son about it unless I said, and what I'm doing about that is, and what your mom and I are doing to work on each other is, so that he doesn't just hear this happen, but I know if I were him, I would feel kind of relieved or less like I needed to do something if I heard that you had a path and we're going forward. We worry about our parents, we worry that you're going to do it again. We worry that you aren't going to stay together. We worry, so to hear that you and mom are on a path to healing, I think is part of the discussion you should have with him. I do not under any circumstances think you should tell him the details of your affair or whatever it was. Don't tell him who, don't tell him when, don't tell him how many times, don't tell him how many other people. The better you can minimize the details. No child wants to think about their parents' sex life. However, it is important to acknowledge what he saw and that you're ashamed of it and that you feel awful about it and it's your problem and that you hurt his mom and, all of that stuff. You have to acknowledge it, but not in detail. So Tammy, what are your thoughts? Anything else?
I concur. So first of all, you had typed to just you and me. So I typed, so everything that I just typed in was from Dr. Rob, not me. So, but it came anyway. So it was the 5 stages. But I agree with you. But, and I think, acknowledging this, I'm on a path. I'm working to do things like it's really important. And I get a lot of this, where parents, particularly if they're the betrayed partner, are hyper vigilant, like concerned that it's automatically going to happen to the kids. And
Right.
A lot of it is, like your kids have been raised in a different environment, and I don't know, and I hear, siblings, and one is and one isn't, so it's not an automatic. And if they've had enough, and if there's an ability to talk about feelings and share things, the more their emotional needs can be met and validated. It isn't like, oh, I can't have a voice in this, we have to have the perfect, we have to look good to everybody on the outside, even though, they're behind the closed doors, there's chaos and things. So it's very, I think being open to having discussions, again, not the gory details, but like, wow, this has been such a personal journey for me. I'm learning so much, I'm committed to the process. I'm doing what I need to do on a daily basis, like all of those things. Offer, if there's things that they need to talk to in a safe place, offer therapy for them, can be, a really helpful thing as well. So, it is challenging, and especially when kids have discovery like that, it is challenging.
I did want to say one more thing, Tammy, which is you didn't say if he has other siblings or if you have other children.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because
And let me
if
tell
they
you,
do, then there's the highway
they
between
know.
them. So yeah,
They know. I mean, if you think, well, they didn't find out, believe me, every sibling talks to their other sibling
yes,
about this kind of stuff, whether they're getting along or they're not, or they're stepkids, or you can expect that all your kids, if you have more than this son, are going to know. And that's something you should also talk to your son about. As I understand, you've probably told your brothers and sisters, whatever that is. But I would plan on that because I haven't run into many kids who didn't tell their other siblings everything, especially when mom and dad are struggling. So let's keep going, Tam.
so I am 6 years from D-Day. my SAPA husband has only had 2 therapy sessions and a few online group sessions. He tells me he has been sober since D-Day, but his behavior is awful. I get accused of cheating, called me a whore. He lies
Oh,
constantly. Most recent, I found out he spent $12,000 of our insurance money that was supposed to be used to repair our dwelling that was damaged. He also borrowed more money from his dad and spent most of that. He has spent over $100,000 on credit card debt. When I brought this up, he blamed me. I was blamed for piling it on him and causing him stress. He told me, "Go find someone you love, and you never wanted this marriage to work." I don't think for 1 minute he is sober. That does not sound like sobriety to me at all. Oh, and when he gets angry, he tells me, "You are an angry person and you hate me."
so Tammy, I guess this is the night where we're talking to abused spouses. That's what
Yes, and
tonight's
that's
theme is.
that is abuse. I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
Well,
You know
I
what,
like
in
this.
fact, what are your thoughts about financial abuse in general?
Oh,
Because we,
I hate that, and and I do. Well, one of the things we test for when clients come into our program is the financial, whether it's overworking, underworking, overspending. You know, all like there's so much dysfunction around money, but wow, what a lot of blame shifting and
Mhm.
yeah. So you know, and like the calling you a whore, like it feels like is that transference? I don't even know, but is that like
That's
I did
just
all
being an
this acting
asshole.
out? Okay, fair. You know,
That's what
yeah,
that is.
yeah. So to me, this is um I don't know your situation. You know, what are the good parts of this relationship? What is this, how is this helpful for you? You know, I would be looking at what do I need to do for my safety? And I always say financial, you know, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And like, wow, the financial, you know, part of this is so chaotic and it has to be so stressful for you, you know, but yeah, I mean, I don't put up with anybody, you know, raging at me and you know, blaming me. I mean, that's on them. And clearly, he's created quite a crisis for you guys.
Yeah, I don't understand this. I don't think that there's much we can do when our spouses are not really taking responsibility for their own actions. And I don't think it's our job to say, I think it would say once, you know, that's really mean and really awful and considering what you've done. But beyond that, you know, if someone wanted to take responsibility for their behavior, they could. This is shocking. I mean, this is just, now you may have gazillions of dollars and to you, you know, maybe $5 to me, it might be a million, but it isn't even about the amount. It's about how it was done in secret. It was done that was meant for with things that were meant for other things. You weren't involved. Um, people want, yeah, and this is not recovery. You know, one of the things we talk about all the time is if you're going to make a good decision for your relationship, make it for both of you. And this is a very selfish person who is making all their decisions for themselves. And then when you don't like it, they're saying you're the problem because you keep asking me about it. And then the shaming, go find someone you love and you never wanted this marriage to work. And I would trust your gut. Something is really wrong here. And by the way, this is someone who would do great in treatment. Or if you want me to do a consultation with the two of you, this is a situation where this gentleman, I believe, yes, really needs someone to, excuse my language, get in his face. And you know, that's not your job. It's not your job to confront or challenge. It's your job to say how that makes you feel and how you've been affected, and then decide how you're going to take care of yourself. Oh, by the way, if it were me, and I am not allowed to say this in any official way, but if it were me, I'd get a lawyer because I would really, you don't know that there aren't 3 other bank accounts and 12 other, you know, this person obviously has a spending problem. So how do you know how many credit cards he has? How do you know, what he's giving money to? Or so I would absolutely consider, just to learn my rights. I would feel pretty awful if I found out our retirement fund was leveraged and I didn't have the money to retire because he had spent it. So I really, really encourage you to protect yourself. I can't tell you what to do, but I can say in these circumstances, I would probably find an attorney so that I could feel safe.
Well, and I like your physical safety is about your dwelling, and your dwelling apparently had some damage, and the money that was provided to repair that is has been spent on something else. And just from, Dr. Robbie said, well, if you've got lots of money, but it's, he's borrowed money from his father. So he's going out. So it appears that this has put you in a precarious financial situation, but also your physical safety. Like if you're living in a dwelling that is not safe because there's damage that needs to be repaired, that isn't safe for you, as well. So I'm really sorry about all that.
And I'm all for what these men are saying to their spouses. The other one said, shut up. I would say, you know what? I'm going to shut up. In this case, he says, you're an angry person. You hate me. I would think, yeah, I'm pretty angry. And right now I kind of hate you. So he's not far from the truth. It's just he's using it as a manipulation to try to get you to feel guilty. There's a lot of how could you do this to me? And I'm so vulnerable and poor me. And, I do think that spouses can get confused because we do have this commitment to in sickness and in health. And the idea that addiction is a sickness, which is very understandable, leaves me saying, well, I don't want to put too much burden on them, or I don't want to make them feel bad, or I don't want to whatever it is because they're ill. And I think that part of this illness of addiction is to really learn how my behavior is affecting other people and really take a good look at myself in that way. And that's either going to be my growth or that's going to be a reason for you to move away. But you got to protect yourself in these circumstances. This is awful. So
it is. Well, and part of taking responsibility is accountability. We are accountable, and it's you share in an example before where if somebody got into recovery and they had done something like this and borrowed money and done all that, they would be doing a second or third job so that they could restore the funds that
right.
That's accountability. That's how we start to make amends for the things that we have done, not just blaming you. You're an angry person. Like you are a deeply hurt person.
Right.
You are somebody that is like that's a huge concern. Like I'm sitting here going like, I hate this for you. And he's just, blaming you, and like the complete lack of regard, for you or any of his behavior, the lack of remorse, the lack of anything other than, him name calling you, and doing more, going and borrowing more, and as long as, and it feels like as long as he's able to continue this path, I say often nothing changes until, nothing changes if nothing changes, or the other one is nothing changes until something changes, and he's not had enough negative consequences yet to make him need to shift, unfortunately.
I also understand
yeah.
not wanting to be alone and not wanting to give up on a relationship, or, the worst has already happened. So how much worse could it get? But, as I've said before, to all you spouses, I read all your letters. I listened to what you have to say. It isn't the sex even the secrets that makes you hurt the most. It's our disconnection. It's our lack of intimacy. It's our lying. It's our unfaithful way of being emotionally. And, I keep hearing these stories where, forget the addiction. These are men who are not kind. They're not reflective. Forget being shut down and emotionally unavailable. They're downright mean. And so, I've worked with a lot of folks who are willing to understand that their spouse may not be able to give as much emotionally as they may want because they're damaged or whatever. But abuse is abuse. And I would ask you to go online and look up the word abuse and see what's under there. One of the things, don't we write about financial abuse, Tammy? I think we do. And it limits your ability to take care of yourself. So anyway, I will not go on and on, but this makes me very sad. Why don't we keep moving?
So the next one, my SA partner keeps making the same stupid mistakes regarding recovery. For example, he will keep forgetting what time the same webinars are every week for the last year and a half, and he won't set the alarm on his phone. He has been claiming recovery for a year and a half, and as of today, he probably relapsed yesterday at best. He has had 2 weeks sobriety. He claims he wants this, but he seems to keep sabotaging himself intentionally. What gives?
Well, why don't you start with this one, Tammy, if you don't mind?
So I first thought, what are your healthy boundaries about this? Like, this isn't your responsibility. So like, this would be, if you're unwilling to do the basic things, to set an alarm on your phone. Oh my gosh, that is so easy. Like on our website, you can click and it will add it to the calendar. Like this is not, super high tech, hard to navigate stuff. It's like click, boom, add it to your calendar in your time zone,
Right,
it's super easy.
Tammy knows how to do
So
this for you if you don't know how to do
yes,
this.
so it's one of those things where like his unwillingness, because this isn't making the same stupid mistakes. This is his unwillingness to
Right.
move into real recovery. So he's in denial yet. And yeah, I hear you, and good for you for not buying. Oh, I'm giving lip service to, I've been in recovery for a year and a half. He may have been dancing around, kind of that abstinence. I'm in periods of abstinence, which is just not doing the problematic behaviors. But I hear you saying maybe he's got 2 weeks of abstinence, maybe not, so it's challenging. But the only thing as a betrayed partner that we have control of is ourselves, our actions and reactions. So if somebody continues those patterns, what do I need to do? I mentioned earlier, I'll tell you what, I'd be, the drawbridge would be coming up, and I'd be, the moat would be bigger. It would be, our distance would have to be for my personal safety. I'd have to make that, I'd have to make that a bigger gap. It wouldn't be me making the gap. It'd be his unwillingness to move into helping the relationship. Dr. Rob talked about, keeping what is good for the relationship. This is not good for the relationship. Right. This isn't good for him, and certainly not good for you. So, so it's, to me, denial and lack of, I just mentioned it in the last, he hasn't had negative enough consequences as the result of his acting out. And it's not your job to, you need to do, I'm like, no, you take care of you, find support, you're not willing to do that. You know what? I'm glad you're here, but I'm going to go have, coffee with a girlfriend, all good, take care of you, and not make him and his addiction the primary focus.
Yeah. And I wanted to say that, this is not sabotage. This is not sabotage. This is somebody who's doing what they want and then saying, oops, I forgot, or oops, I meant to do this, or oh my goodness, I really want this. If you really want something, if you miss that 2:00 meeting, you can go to a 5:00 meeting. If you miss that appointment, you can make another one. I don't think that there is a commitment when someone is when someone can be looked at as sabotage. People miss things, people make mistakes, but even just listening to your words tells me that you feel like he's undermining his work, and I think he's not really attending to it. And I would ask you, does he sabotage work? Does he sabotage other situations? Is this who he is, that he undermines his own things that are important? Does he undermine things that are important to him other than the relationship with you? And if he doesn't tend to do that, then I would say this isn't important to him. So it's more sad to me than, God, Tammy, all these partners who are feeling unsupported and have angry, this is not a good night. I don't like it.
It's going to be a good night, because you know what? I hope you're taking the message as the only person that can take care of me is me. And you talked about, the 2:00 meeting, or so last Friday, Dr. Rob, I had a plan to go to the noon meeting, and my life wasn't working out. And so I have an app on my phone, and there's a meeting, and I drove a ways away from my house, went to a meeting that I was not familiar with. It wasn't, one of my home groups, it wasn't all my peeps that I know. And it was Rule 62, which is don't take yourself so seriously. And it was a hoot. And I may never go to that meeting again, just, I might, but I was committed to, like, I drove way out of my way to go to that meeting because it was important for me to honor my commitment that I had made to myself, that I was going to go to a meeting. That's all it was. And the other thing I was thinking when you're talking, Dr. Rob, is, in our addiction, we are absolutely focused. Like we would never miss an opportunity to act out. Like we will show up for that early, so this is, so this is just, where's his priorities, and clearly they aren't on recovery. Lip service of like, oh, I want this so bad. I want you so bad. Meaningless. It's what are your actions showing? And his actions are showing, yeah. So, okay. What are some ways I can help my partner deal with betrayal trauma I have caused her? I am in early recovery and have appointments with a CSAT, and I'm working through 12 steps. She is fluctuating between thinking things will be okay and thinking things are over. And I am trying to do everything I can to help her and myself. I love her with every fiber of my being, and I'm so scared of losing her right now. Do you have any resources that deal with this topic? We're only a couple of months past D-Day, but I've been very seriously seeking recovery for 2 weeks.
Well, I think, Tammy, you could talk about Out of the Doghouse and some of the work. I've written books about this, and not simply for sex addicts who act out, but I don't think any men really have a clue how to make peace with a woman if they have cheated on them. I just think men don't get it. So I wrote a book about this. We teach a course about this. Tammy can throw it in the chat if she wants, but this is brand new. I mean, this is brand new. And I don't even understand. You said we're a couple of months past capital D Day, which means to me doing disclosure with a therapist. But then you say you're only been serious for 2 weeks.
I think it's
So
discovery day, or
I
the
see.
self-disclosure.
Well, okay. So I think that your expectations about how your partner should feel or how you want them to feel are based on you. They're based on what you want and would make you feel comfortable. It has nothing to do with her. If you had loved her with every fiber of your being, you would say, I don't have any idea what she's been through, and I feel so sad that she's hurting so much. And, she can be as angry at me as long as she needs to be because I love her with every fiber of my being. Loving her with every fiber of your being doesn't mean as soon as I can get her to forgive me and I can feel better. So to me, this, as sincere as it is, lacks empathy. Um, I don't think it's realistic in the sense that 2 weeks. I don't know how long you've been together, but I bet you've been together a while. And 2 weeks compared to the relationship is not a lot of time. You've broken someone's heart. You've ruined their lives as far as they're concerned. And so if you think candy or flowers are a nice gift, I always tell partners, take the flowers, take the gift, take the vacation, and you can still hate them. That's very Joan Rivers of me, I think. But nonetheless,
Talk about ambivalent love too, please.
yeah, you go ahead and mention that. I would appreciate that.
Okay. Well, you talk often, Dr. Rob, about ambivalent love. I love him. I hate him. I love him. I hate him. Yes. Yes. Both are true. And I have to say, and this may be a little Joan Rivers of me, but I bet you weren't thinking about how much you loved her with every fiber of your being when you were acting out. And so yes, you're on the flip side of it. And like, oh, darn, I got caught. I say this all the time. You focusing on your partner right now is not helpful. What you focusing on you and learning to be different, because otherwise, guess what? If you're focusing on your partner, I still don't have to look at me. I don't have to work on me. And it's the easy way out. It's like, oh, I'll turn all of my energy into what do I need to do, over here, but I'm still not having to deal with, the issues. We talk about this, the acting out is the symptom. So, stopping the problematic behavior. And it's not just, oh, I've been caught and I'll never do that again. It's having a plan. We have the Sex Addiction 101 work group. I hope you are participating in that. It just started on Saturday. You could still join if you missed it. Otherwise, it'll start again on July 17th. So those are concrete things. You're here. There's a men's drop-in group this morning. There's another one tomorrow. And then there's one Thursday and Friday and Sunday night. All of those are great ideas, to help you. And then we've got separate things for your betrayed partner. We've got separate drop-in groups for your betrayed partner. I hope your betrayed partner is also here. We've got a work group for your betrayed partner. We've got so many resources. You doing the work that you need to do to learn to not just stop the problematic behavior, but to be a different person. But you guys cannot be the sole support for each other. That will be so. I mean, like we talk about this all the time. People call me all the time. We need couples help. We just had discussed. No, you guys doing the work that you need to do, which is different and separate. You need accountability. I just talked about that a minute ago. You need, some structure, and you need to have a plan. And your betrayed partner needs, betrayal trauma support. And help for support, just to hold the space. But ambivalent love. I love him. I hate him. I love him. I hate him. Yep. Yes, and that's okay. Until you are able to show up differently, and that's a long time, especially if you're doing this kind of on your own. Which is CSAT is helpful, but what are you doing on a daily basis? You're probably looking at 12 to 24 months. Take those with a huge grain of salt. People get caught in the, like on the 12th month, things are magically going to change. They don't. It's what are you doing on a daily basis to change that starts to give a partner, oh, look, I see his actions being different. I should see him showing up a little differently. He says he's going to take out the trash and he takes out the trash. All of those things, it's really what your actions are. But lip service is just lip service.
And Tammy, I don't see anything, and maybe you mentioned, I don't see anything about 12-step recovery. I don't see anything out the partner getting
I'm
support.
working through the 12 steps. So I have an
Yeah, but
appointment with a CSAT and I'm working through the 12 steps.
this
So
is
that is
so
actually good.
early.
Yes,
This
so
is so
early.
early. Anyway, I think your expectations are unreasonable. And I think the best gift you can give your spouse is to let her be as angry and as upset or and disappointed and overwhelmed as they need to be, because that would be caring for them.
And do the work for you. Like, I'm glad you're working through the 12 steps. Honestly, I love that you're working through the 12 steps. You're not just going to meetings. It really is. Dr. Rob talked about the 10th step. Like, it is doing the work. Steps 4 through 9 are the meat of the program. It's where we clean house. So you doing that work is meaningful. And that is part of how you can show up differently. Okay, next question, Dr. Rob. Addict here, I've been doing recovery worksheets, going to meetings, seeing a CSAT, and I'm 9 months out from D-Day. My girlfriend and I have a lot of difficult conversations and have gotten better at having them over time. However, sometimes while doing work or talking about my addiction, how I abuse my partner, I still have trouble reducing shame and being present in the moment to process my own actions, emotions. What are some ways you know of to help reduce the intense feeling of shame? I want to be able to be there and hear my partner rather than sit and feel overwhelmingly sorry for myself. Great question.
Sorry. I love their honesty. I really,
Yeah, I do
really
too.
do. So there's two things to this for me. Because we do this, we talk to the men a lot about this in Seeking Integrity when they come in for residential treatment, which is they always come in, every one of them, thinking, I'm a bad person. I hate myself. How could I do this to someone I love? What's wrong with me? And all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that's wrong with that is it doesn't give you any place to grow. If you're just a bad, awful person who doesn't care if they hurt people or not, then there's not much that anybody can do for you. But when we look a little bit back in the histories of the men we work with, it's very clear that they never got to learn the healthy lessons that you need to learn about having relationships or being a better human being. And so I consider the men I work with broken. And when I look at broken, either emotionally broken from early in life or or profoundly crisis-based experiences, when I see people that are broken, I trust my profession. I believe that we can help people heal. The addiction is like a scar. It's never going to go away, but we can help you tolerate it and live with it. So I have worked with some, and Tammy knows some. We've had a few bad people along the way, but most of the people I work with are deeply broken. And I think if you could see yourself from that perspective, then the shame will go away, because people make horrible, awful mistakes based on their own problems, but that doesn't make them bad. That makes them inadequate, problematic, all of that stuff. The other piece is that if I were sitting in shame with my behavior with someone, I think it's a little selfish to sit there and say, I'm so awful and I can't believe I did this and I must have hurt them so much. And because that's not really thinking about them. That's kind of self-obsession, poor me, look what I did, and I'm a terrible person. And to me, if you want to get out of shame in the moment, look at that person and think of how they're feeling. Wow, they must be feeling awful. Wow, they must be feeling, really focus on their feelings. Say it back to them. You look deeply hurt, and listen to what they have to say and understand what they're going through. I have actually stopped men that I work with who are weeping because they just hate themselves so much about what they've done. And you think, as a therapist, we want to keep people crying. But in that moment, I know that, with all due respect, it's crocodile tears. They're crying for themselves about how much they hate themselves, as opposed to crying for the the pain that their spouse or other people are going through. So number one, you're not a bad person, you're a broken person. And which means you came by this honestly. And number two is that that it's not about you. It's about the person that you've harmed, and your obsession with your horribleness is not going to help them or the situation get better. So that's my best shot, Tammy.
So in the chat, I put, so Troy Love does a group for men on Friday, and it's Finding Peace. And he talks about the shadows of shame, the voices of shame. And, he's got names for all of those, and the attachment wounds, all of those things. That would be super helpful. I also put the work groups, because he has a work group. And one more thing, he does the fourth Wednesday of the month, the Wednesday morning webinars. That means he's on this Wednesday. It's great. He talks about attachment wounds and shame. The other thing is, I read this, and well, first of all, you're 9 months in, and with all due respect, fantastic. And also, still so early, but my girlfriend and I have a lot of difficult conversations. And I had this image, and I don't know if this is true, but this stuff comes up randomly, and then you have 2-hour-long conversations and all of that. And we've talked a lot about having a framework of this. It's a lot easier to tolerate, if there's a scheduled time, and it's 20 minutes and it's 10 minutes each of you, and you talk about, something. And if it's something that needs to be discussed with a qualified professional, because it's like, oh, we need some extra help on this particular one, or I need to go, I hear what you're saying, and I need to go talk to my sponsor. I need to go, this is, whatever, but we're going to come back to it. Like, there's all kinds of parameters that you can set up. But if it's like you're constantly rehashing the same things, and I'm not saying you are, but but oftentimes I see that as a pattern when we're having like these difficult conversations. You can be prepared for it if you know that at 7:00 on Tuesday night, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to share, and we're going to go back and forth. We can come back to the topic, but it's a contained time. You can call your sponsor before, you can call your sponsor after, you can check in, you can hold the space, when it's something like that. Okay,
I
go
do
ahead.
want to recommend also Brene Brown's work. Dr. Brown really is the expert, or the current expert, in the whole topic of shame. And I think that a lot of her books are really helpful in understanding the process and healing from it. So yeah, let's keep moving.
So the next one, what does restitution really mean in practice?
Wow. Well, why don't you start with Tammy? That's a really good question.
It does. And there's some things, I mean, you can't undo. So we talked about the finances, so it's making financial restitution. If I took, $20,000, like we hear this unfortunately regularly, where somebody's, secreted away funds, and it's come out of college funds, retirement funds, out of businesses that it shouldn't have. So then I'm going to make restitution on that from a financial standpoint. I can't undo, a sexual acting out. I can't undo those things, but, I'm going to work on living differently. We talk about in 12-step, we talk about living amends, and I think that's sorry is trite and, placating, but it doesn't really mean anything. So my living amends is I'm going to do things differently. And I've got long stories about that. I won't go into those, but it's like I have to choose to do things differently than I would have done, in the past. But restitution often can refer to, like a financial situation. That's kind of an easier example of like, this was taken and I need to restore it. So it's how can I restore? Does that make sense?
Are you speaking with me?
Well, you're the only one that can
Everything
answer.
you say, Tammy, makes sense. Everything.
Not always, but yeah. But
well, the
hopefully that
literal
helps.
word means to make an amends to another person and to compensate them for the losses or damages that they've suffered, which is in essence to restore them to where they were originally. So it requires an act. And sometimes, to be honest, there is nothing we can do to do restitution. I don't know if you mentioned this, Tammy, but sometimes we have to live our restitution.
Yeah, living
I
amends.
can't, for example, the guy whose son found out what he was doing online, you can't take that back. you can't ask him to unthink that. Could you volunteer for or help or be an example or sponsor people? In other words, can you take on acts in life that while you can't fix that one, you can contribute to other people's lives and become an example of who you want to be? And I think that that is a living, what we call a living amends, is how I think about it. So you can't always fix the problem. You can't go to your son and say, oh, that never happened. You read the wrong thing or whatever, but you can commit to a different life and you can help other people. We have endless opportunities for restitution, but they may not be the kind where you say, oh, I took $10 for you and here's $10 back. That's just now how it works.
Yes. Yeah. And it comes out in your fourth and fifth step. So it's one of those things where, yeah, like if you do the work, a lot of this stuff becomes clear. So the next question, Dr. Rob, is, does my unfaithful sex addict husband love me?
Wow, so I think one of the questions we get a lot of the time is, God, there's so many. What time is that? Because I want timestamp.
It is the 5:14. It's just the one sentence.
So one of the things that I hear the most from spouses, and I don't know where you're at, I don't know how long this has been going on, I don't know what work you're doing. I mean, obviously we know very little. But what I most often, the term that I hear from a female spouse is, how could you love me and do this at the same time? How could you say you love me and yet do these things that destroy me? And, I think if we take it out of sex addiction and we put it into, let's say, alcoholism, I drive into trees, I get arrested for DUIs, I lose jobs. All our friends know I'm alcoholic. I've embarrassed us at parties and events. I've embarrassed at family holidays. I think it's easier in those circumstances because it's not quite as personal to say, oh, I can see how you love me, but your addiction is destroying you. It's easier to see, oh, now that I think about it, you were probably drinking before we met. But when it becomes so personal as in terms of sexual or romantic betrayal, then the word love comes up. How could you love me and gamble? How could you love me and eat compulsively? When you take it out of the sex, it becomes much less personal. And that is I think one of the harder parts for us, Tammy, in working with spouses is it's so deeply wounding as a person. It is such a rejection of what you believed you had that it's impossible to see the difference it's impossible to see that they're broken. What that you see so much of the time is they did this to me and how could they do this to me? And so, yes, I don't know your husband. He may well not love you. I don't know the circumstances, but I do know in general that we can absolutely deeply love someone. And at the same time, this is what we call compartmentalization. My family and my life and my love for you live in this box. And then over here are all the things I do, and they're separate. And when I'm in this box, I do my best not to think about you. And when I'm over here, I do my best to not think about that. And I keep them as separate as I can. So I can go into a sexual acting out or seeking drugs or getting drunk. And I'm thinking, well, this is just going to be a lot of fun and nobody will know. And, we also have this thought that what they don't know won't hurt them. And I hear a lot of addicts say that. And I think, don't you know they know already? I mean, they don't necessarily know what it is, but they know that you're distant. They know that you're unavailable. They know that that there are certain things they just can't figure out. They know that something's wrong. So anyway, I don't think it's about love. I think it's about disease and disorder and brokenness. Yeah, Tammy, it's a sad
Yeah,
question.
well, it is, but yeah, compartmentalization. But I want to double up on what you said about, it isn't that the details, because I hear all the time, people think I should have known, but I didn't know. But the gaslighting, the blame shifting, all of those things happen, and you just, like, you can write it off to, oh, he's stressed at work or something. I mean, whatever, because your brain is trying to make it logical, for this partner that you love and care about, and we're in this together. So this is not, he was not saying, oh, you did know the details. No, you can really not know the details and still have this feeling,
Right,
like,
this feeling.
like something is just not quite right, even if your addict is going like, yeah, we're good, and showing up with flowers, like there's still maybe something niggling, maybe not, so.
By the way,
Okay,
this is when we
go ahead.
gaslight and blame you. When you
Yes.
say something must be wrong, and we say, I don't know why you're saying that. You're always bugging me. I think everything's great. This is when we undermine you, is when we think you're onto something. So anyway, go ahead, Tammy.
Next question. How does anyone watch TV? My husband watches truck building shows. I wake up to a female on the show he used to objectify. He said he didn't know she would be on the show, but he knew she'd be on the show. Says he did the right thing by changing the station. He can't see it as an issue.
So here's the issue. It makes you uncomfortable. That's the issue. It doesn't really matter whether he objectifies or not, whether he's lying or not. That's really not, if you think in the bigger picture, what matters is if this bothers you and if you are important, and if he knows that he has issues there, and he knows it has upset you, and you have said, please don't do that, it makes me uncomfortable, then he can read a truck building magazine, So I don't, or look at YouTube videos, but I think that what this is, bottom line, the issue is disrespect to you and disrespecting your feelings and what's important to you. So, whether or not he objectifies that person is less important to me than the fact that he's not listening to, he's letting you become uncomfortable and not concerned about you. And that again, there's just so many hurt spouses on here in non-sexual ways. It's a sad night, Tammy. That's what I say.
Well, and with this one, it's like, to me, he's lying to himself. Oh, I'm just going to watch this truck building show, and and you say he knew she'd be on it. So whether she is on it or not, somebody else might be. It really is. He's lying. He's still in denial. He's lying to himself and to you, and that he changed the channel. But you woke up and saw this, so he didn't change the channel fast enough. If you saw this, so okay. Next question, Dr. Robbie. And this probably will have to be our last one, because it's time almost 17 months since D-Day, left house.
Wait, I want to do the one before that, just very briefly. Can you mention that? Because I want to mention it.
Please provide me with the information on consultation for Dr. Rob. And so I said, email me.
Right. No, I do a 2-hour consultation with couples especially when the addict seems to be stuck and the partner is saying, I don't understand how you cannot understand this. And I've shown you these videos. If you looked at this and that, and, I don't feel like we're getting anywhere. And I want you to talk to, one of the professionals in order to get challenged, looked at, supported, diagnosed. And I sit in and I go to couples and I listen to everything and I do give them feedback. They can take it or not, but my feedback on what I hear and what might be their best recommendations for change. And yeah, you can reach out to Tammy. I've had couples hate me. I have had couples love me. I have had couples write me later and say, I'm so grateful that you put us on a road that we weren't able to get on. I have heard couples say we've been in therapy for 12 years and no one has been this honest or direct. It's a skill set. And so I'm glad to do it. And yeah, you need to reach out to Tammy for that.
And some of them really find hope, and others, not too long ago we had someone that was like, I'm really clear I need to file for divorce. And you know what, it was affirming to that person regardless of the outcome, because I think that person was ambivalent and really holding out hope that there could be hope, if he just got enough, if he just got the right whatever, and it became, I think, pretty transparent during the consultation and after that, he wasn't going to. So, okay. One more question.
Let's do this last question. Yeah, sure.
17 months since D-Day, left house for a year and back now, but separated, active in therapy and SLAA, no acting out, step kids, late 20s, not living at home, still want nothing to do with me. When they come home for a visit, I leave the house or they won't come to see mom. This really affects our chances at working things out. How do I address this? So this to me feels like the stepkids know about the acting out. That's, yeah. So
I'm sure they want nothing to do with you. I'm sure of that.
Yes. Yeah. So feels like that's the problem of, yeah.
So you'll hear me say this over and over again. And Tammy, please write this in the chat in all caps for me, because I do it wrong every time. Behaviors have consequences. Behaviors have consequences. It does not matter how hard you work or how hard you've been working or all the great work you've done or how much you love their mom, or they have their own lives and their own feelings about their mom. And maybe they're very protective of mom. Maybe she went through a bad time with their real father. I don't know, but they have a right. They're in their 20s. They have a right to never forgive you. They have a right to say, we don't want to see you in the house. I don't know if it affects, your behavior, and the big picture is what is affecting your chances of working things out. The fact that you have moved back home, that you're trying, uh, 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 yeah, that you have moved. Is that right? Not separated, active in therapy. The kids are not living at home. I don't know. Is this person still living in the home, Tammy, or are
So,
they still
so
separated?
it feels like it
Back
says left
now.
house for, yeah. So
Right.
the
Right.
husband and wife are reunited.
Right.
When the stepkids come,
Right.
he leaves because otherwise they won't come visit their
Right.
mother.
So this is their mother is not saying, well, my kids are so angry at you, so I don't want to work things out with you, or you wouldn't be living there. I do think, though, it may take time. It may take years before these kids are willing to engage you. And by the way, at the other end, I think they're probably saying, Mom, why are you letting him live with you? What are you thinking? And, but I do hear a woman who's pretty strong, who's able to say to her kids, I understand that. But I think we can work on this. I'll tell you what, if you screw up, this relationship is over. She's going to choose her kids for sure. So you have a very meaningful, you not only have the recovery for you and your relationship, but you're already swimming upstream, as you said. So to me, this would be more motivation to to work really hard to stay sober and to do the things that create restitution.
Yes. Well, and be incredibly gracious when those kids are coming over. Be gracious. Enjoy the time with your kids. I'm going to go to my 12-step meeting. I'm going to go, like, be
Right.
gracious.
To
That
your
would
wife.
be,
Right.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Just like,
Right.
and no whining. I'm sorry, but no
Right.
whining about, oh, I have to leave. No, your
Tammy, I'm
behaviors have
really glad you
consequences.
said that.
So it's like,
Right.
this is important that you have time with your
Right.
kids. I'm sorry that the kids know, even if they're step kids, like this is what happens, and I don't know if
What
they had
happens.
discovery, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but
Hmm.
they know. And so be supportive of your wife having time with her
Right.
kids, and be pleasant, and go do some recovery work for yourself.
I'm so glad you said that, Tammy, because what will work against your chances of things working out is, well, when are your kids going to change their mind? And we've been working so hard and they're just undermining. I think I respect them for being angry at me, and I completely understand it. And I really appreciate you, sweetheart, for walking the line between spending time with them. And, I think this situation where you really need to be grateful, as Tammy said, for having all of this, and give it time, a lot of time, and see how it goes. Yeah, but I wouldn't despair. You're living in your home with your spouse. I mean, you're on
Yes.
the way.
Yes, that is, like, that's progress. And the longer we're in recovery, the more we can change. I was talking really short because I know we're out of time. I was talking to a friend this weekend, and I was talking about, even at this point, I'm still grateful for the transformations I can make in recovery, and so be
Me too.
heartened that, yeah, but be heartened that you are, like, you are still, again, with all due respect, you are still pretty early in the journey. The
Hmm.
first few years, like, we don't even really talk about recovery until, like 2 years in of really doing the work, because
Hmm.
then stuff really starts, kind of coming together more. So you're very early in the process that you have regained, the ability to live together. Fantastic. And then what do I need to do today, to do things, better and differently? That's what you need to do. So.
And I really like, Tammy, what you said about, see this as an opportunity. If Thanksgiving is coming and you're not going to be able to kids, well, go volunteer somewhere. Go help
Yes.
somebody where you can really make a difference and feel good about yourself, rather than saying, oh, poor me, I'm sitting here at Denny's eating Thanksgiving dinner. See if there's something you could do for other people. And I think that will be some restitution for yourself.
Hmm.
So anyway,
Hmm.
Tammy, as always, I love doing this with you. Thank you. Hey, it's the
Likewise.
3rd of July next week. Are we meeting or are we not meeting?
Yes, we said that, because we talked about it, and so we
Okay.
said we were. So we'll be
Okay.
here, But do watch the calendar because the Tuesday, the 4th, things got canceled. So those
Yeah.
won't be happening. But the Monday night, Dr. Rob
But
and I
we will be here.
We'll be here, red, white, and blue
Okay.
on. So, all right.
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.